The old woman froze. Her wrinkled hand trembled as her eyes locked on the small silver necklace hanging around the little black girl's neck. The girl didn't understand why the woman suddenly stopped talking. They were standing right in the middle of the jewelry store, surrounded by glass cases and soft music, but now everything felt silent. The woman's lips parted, her eyes wet. Where did you get that necklace?" she whispered, her voice breaking. The girl looked up at her shyly. "It was my mom's," she said softly. She gave it to me before she died." The old woman took a shaky step back, her hand covering her mouth. She blinked hard, as if trying to stop tears. "No," she whispered almost to herself. "It can't be." People in the store started to stare. The clerk behind the counter frowned, wondering what was going on. The girl's aunt, who stood beside her, put a protective arm around her shoulders. "Is something wrong, ma'am?" she asked cautiously. But the old woman, whose name was Eleanor Whitmore, one of the richest women in the city, wasn't listening. Her breathing grew heavy. Her knees trembled. The sight of that necklace had hit her like lightning, because she had seen it before. Many years ago. On someone she could never forget. And now, seeing it on this little black girl, right here in front of her, it broke something inside her. Eleanor's tears finally spilled. I need to sit down," she whispered. The little girl looked frightened now. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked, her small voice shaking. Eleanor just shook her head, her whole body trembling. "No, sweetheart," she said weakly. You didn't do anything wrong." Her gaze lingered on the necklace one last time before she whispered, "You just brought back a ghost I thought I'd buried forever." The girl's aunt frowned. "A ghost." But before Eleanor could answer, her knees gave out, and she collapsed to the floor. People screamed. Someone called for help. The girl clutched the necklace, not knowing what had just happened, but feeling deep down that this moment was about to change everything. It had all started 2 weeks earlier, on a warm Saturday morning in Atlanta, Georgia. 12-year-old Nia Johnson was standing in front of a small mirror in her aunt's living room, gently touching the necklace around her neck. It wasn't fancy, just a silver chain with a small heart-shaped pendant. The metal had faded with time, but to Nia, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. Her late mother, Jasmine, had given it to her when she turned 7. Nia could still remember that day like it was yesterday. Her mom had smiled through tired eyes, saying, "Keep this close, baby. It's more special than you know." Now, 5 years later, Jasmine was gone, taken by a sudden illness, and Nia lived with her Aunt Tasha, who worked 2 jobs to keep the bills paid. Life wasn't easy, but Tasha did everything she could to keep Nia smiling. That morning, Nia was excited. Her aunt had promised to take her to a mall she'd never been to before, a place filled with shiny stores and glass elevators. Tasha had saved up for weeks so they could have a girls' day out. "Ready, baby girl?" Tasha called from the kitchen. "Yes, ma'am," Nia said, slipping on her sneakers. They rode the bus downtown, laughing, sharing snacks, and listening to old R&B on Tasha's phone. When they arrived at the mall, Nia's eyes widened. Everything sparkled. The floors, the lights, even the people. They passed expensive stores filled with white mannequins dressed in suits and gowns. Nia pressed her face against the window of one jewelry shop. "Wow," she breathed. "They look like stars." Tasha smiled. "They should look like stars for what they charge," she said, half joking. "Come on, we can look inside, but no touching, okay?" Nia nodded eagerly. Inside, the store smelled of perfume and polished metal. A woman in a black blazer greeted them with a tight smile. "Can I help you?" she asked in a tone that didn't sound very helpful. Tasha smiled politely. "We're just looking, thank you." The woman nodded stiffly and walked away, but not too far. Nia could feel her eyes still watching them. She didn't care, though. She was mesmerized by all the jewelry. Rings that sparkled like tiny rainbows. Bracelets that looked like something princesses wore. She moved slowly, admiring everything, until she stopped in front of a small glass case filled with heart-shaped pendants. Her own necklace seemed to shine a little brighter as she looked. That's when a soft voice came from behind her. "That's a lovely piece you're wearing." Nia turned around. It was an older white woman dressed in pearls and a pale pink coat. Her gray hair was neatly pinned up, and she smelled like roses. She smiled gently at Nia. "Thank you," Nia said shyly. The woman leaned closer, squinting at the pendant. "May I?" she asked, pointing. Nia looked at her aunt, who gave a small nod. "It's okay, baby." The woman stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she studied the necklace. "This design," she whispered. It's old. Very old." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small magnifying glass, something she apparently carried everywhere. "Do you mind?" Nia shook her head. The woman peered through the glass, her hands suddenly trembling. Her breathing quickened. "No," she whispered again. "It can't be." Nia's heart started to race. "Ma'am." The woman's lips trembled as she looked up at Nia, her eyes filling with tears. "Where did you get that necklace, child?" Nia blinked, confused. "It was my mom's," she said softly. "Why?" The woman took a step back. "What was your mother's name?" "Jasmine. Jasmine Johnson." The woman gasped, an audible, sharp sound that made everyone in the store turn toward them. Tasha frowned and took Nia's hand. "What's going on, ma'am?" The woman's face went pale. Her fingers shook as she pointed at the necklace. "Because that necklace," she whispered, voice breaking. "That necklace belonged to my son's fiancée." The room went still. Tasha blinked. "Excuse me." Eleanor swallowed hard, struggling to find words. "My son, Michael Whitmore, he was engaged to a woman named Jasmine. Jasmine Johnson. 20 years ago." Her voice cracked. "He told me she was the love of his life." Nia's heart thudded in her chest. "My mom," she whispered. The woman nodded, tears running down her face. I didn't know she had a daughter." Tasha's face darkened with confusion and suspicion. "Wait, are you saying your son?" But before she could finish, Eleanor's face went ghost white. "She was pregnant," she said softly, almost to herself. "He told me she was pregnant before her voice broke. Before the accident." The air around them felt heavy now. People had stopped pretending not to stare. The store clerk whispered something into her earpiece, and a mall guard peeked through the glass doors. Nia didn't move. She didn't breathe. Her heart was racing so fast it hurt. "What accident?" she asked, her voice tiny. Eleanor's lips quivered. "My son, he died before the wedding." She reached out her hand as if she wanted to touch Nia but stopped halfway. "And I treated Jasmine terribly. I didn't want him to marry her because she was black." Her voice cracked into a sob. "And now I'm standing here looking at her daughter." A hush fell over the store. Even the clerk's cold expression softened. Tasha's jaw clenched. "You're saying this little girl, my niece, was the baby your family turned away?" Eleanor's eyes overflowed. "Yes," she whispered. "And I don't deserve to stand here in front of her." Her knees trembled. "I thought I had all the money in the world," she said, her voice shaking. "But I lost my son, and I let my hate do that." She covered her face, sobbing openly now. "Oh, dear God, forgive me." Nia felt frozen, her small fingers clutching the pendant like it was the only thing keeping her standing. She didn't understand everything, but she could feel the truth behind the woman's tears. Aunt Tasha put her hand on Nia's shoulder protectively. "We need to go," she said gently. But as they turned toward the door, Eleanor's voice cracked behind them. "Please wait." They stopped. "I need to make this right," she said through her tears. "Please let me talk to you both. Let me explain everything." Tasha hesitated. The whole thing felt unreal. Part of her wanted to walk away, protect Nia from this sudden storm. But another part, the part that had seen the woman's raw pain, wondered if there was more to this story. The mall guard approached quietly, unsure whether to step in or not. The clerk whispered, "Should we call someone?" "No," Eleanor said firmly, wiping her eyes. "No. This is my fault. All of it." Her hand trembled as she reached for her purse. "Please," she said again. "Come with me. Just for a moment. I'll tell you everything." Nia looked up at her aunt. "Auntie, should we?" Tasha bit her lip. "I don't know, baby. I don't trust this." Eleanor's tears glistened in the store lights. "I swear, I just want to tell you the truth. About your mother. About my son." Her voice broke. "About what I did." The air was tense. Nia's fingers tightened around her aunt's hand. The crowd had stopped watching, but the silence was still thick. Finally, Tasha sighed. "All right," she said softly. "We'll listen. But we're not going anywhere private." Eleanor nodded quickly. "Of course." But just as she opened her mouth to speak, a loud crash echoed from the entrance. Everyone turned. A young man in a hoodie had shoved open the door and sprinted inside, knocking over a glass display. Shards scattered across the floor as the alarm went off. "Hey! Stop!" the clerk shouted. The thief grabbed a handful of jewelry and dashed toward the exit, but in his rush, he slammed straight into Eleanor, sending her sprawling to the ground. Nia screamed. The man kept running. Security officers shouted and gave chase. Eleanor lay on the floor, motionless, her purse spilled open beside her. Nia's eyes filled with tears as she rushed forward. "Miss Eleanor, are you okay?" But the woman didn't answer. Her eyes fluttered open weakly, and she whispered one final word before losing consciousness. "Jasmine." And then everything went dark. The alarms kept ringing, people screaming, security shouting, but for Nia, everything faded into silence. The woman who claimed to know her mother lay still on the floor, her tears drying against her pale cheeks. And for the first time in her young life, Nia wondered if her mother's past, the one she never talked about, was about to change her future forever. The sound of sirens filled the mall. Blue and red lights flashed through the glass doors as two paramedics rushed inside with a stretcher. Nia stood frozen, clutching her aunt's arm as they watched the scene unfold. Eleanor Whitmore, the billionaire woman who had just told them she once hated Nia's mother, lay unconscious on the marble floor. Her pearl necklace was snapped, beads scattered like tiny white tears. "Ma'am, step back, please," one of the paramedics said to Tasha. Tasha nodded, pulling Nia close. "It's okay, baby. She's gonna be all right." But Nia wasn't sure. She could still hear the woman's weak voice whispering her mother's name before she passed out. Jasmine. The same name that had once filled Nia's house with love, and later, silence. As the paramedics lifted Eleanor onto the stretcher, the crowd slowly dispersed. The thief was caught near the food court, handcuffed and yelling about how he didn't mean to hurt nobody. But all Nia could think about was the woman's pale face as she was carried away. "Should we go home?" Nia asked softly. Tasha looked toward the ambulance, then at Nia. "Yeah, we're going home. But I'm calling that hospital later. I need to know if she's okay." They left the mall quietly, the afternoon sun glaring off the parking lot. The bus ride home felt longer than usual. Nia kept touching her necklace, thinking about the way Eleanor had looked at it, like she had seen a ghost. When they finally got home, Tasha made hot chocolate even though it was warm outside. She wanted to calm Nia down, but truthfully, she was shaken too. "Tasha," Nia said after a long silence, "do you think she was telling the truth?" Tasha sighed. "Baby, I don't know. Rich people say a lot of things when they feel guilty." "But she knew my mom's name," Nia pressed. "And her son's name. What if she really did know her?" Tasha looked at her niece, saw the curiosity and hurt in her eyes, and her heart softened. "We'll find out," she said finally. "I promise. But for now you need to rest. Today was a lot." Nia nodded, but she didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of what had happened. The store, the necklace, the tears, and that moment when Eleanor said she'd treated Jasmine badly because she was black. It made something inside Nia ache. She had heard people talk about racism before, but this felt different. It was personal. And if what Eleanor said was true, That meant the woman who had looked down on her mother might actually be her grandmother. The next morning, the phone rang. Tasha picked it up while stirring oatmeal. "Hello? Is this Miss Tasha Johnson?" came a calm female voice on the line. "Yes, who's asking?" "This is Nurse Daniels from St. Mary's Hospital. You were listed as a contact for Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore's emergency file. She asked that we reach out to you and your niece." Tasha blinked. "Wait, what? She's awake." "Yes, ma'am. She's stable now, but she requested to see the young girl who was with you yesterday. She said it's very important." Tasha hesitated. "What exactly does she want?" The nurse paused. "She said she needs to talk about family." Tasha exhaled slowly. "We'll come by later today." When she hung up, Nia was already standing in the doorway, her backpack in hand. "Is she okay?" Tasha nodded. "Yeah. She's asking to see you." Nia's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" Tasha said. "But we're just going to listen. Nothing more, okay?" St. Mary's Hospital was quiet when they arrived. The halls smelled like disinfectant and lemon polish. A nurse guided them to a private room on the 5th floor. Eleanor Whitmore sat up in bed, pale but alert. Her silver hair was brushed neatly, and the same soft rose scent filled the air. She smiled weakly when she saw Nia. "You came," she whispered. Nia nodded nervously. "Hi." Eleanor motioned for them to sit. "I'm glad you're both here. There's something I've carried for a long time. Something I need to say before it's too late." Tasha crossed her arms but stayed quiet. Eleanor looked at Nia with eyes that shimmered like glass. "I knew your mother, Jasmine. I met her 20 years ago when she started working as a nurse at my son's company clinic. My son, Michael, fell in love with her almost immediately." Her voice softened. "He told me she was kind, gentle, and strong. But when he brought her home to meet me, I wasn't any of those things." She paused, her lips trembling. "I said terrible things to her. I told her she didn't belong in our family. I told Michael that marrying a black woman would ruin his reputation." Tasha frowned. "So you pushed them apart?" Eleanor nodded slowly. "I tried. But Michael refused to listen. He said love didn't see color." Her eyes glistened. "We argued for months. Then one night, he left the house after another fight. He never came back. His car crashed on the highway." The room fell silent. Eleanor's voice broke as she continued. "I blamed Jasmine. I told myself she was the reason he was gone. I even sent people to make sure she never contacted our family again. I thought I was protecting our name, but I was just feeding hate." She took a deep, shaky breath. "I only found out later that she was pregnant. And when I tried to find her to make things right, she was gone." Tasha's eyes softened. "She died 5 years ago." Eleanor closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Then I failed her completely." She reached out her hand to Nia. "And now I've failed you too, haven't I?" Nia didn't move at first. Her throat felt tight. She didn't know how to answer a question like that. Eleanor looked smaller now, not like a billionaire, not like someone who owned buildings and businesses, just an old woman with too many regrets. "I spent years pretending money could fill the hole my hate made," Eleanor whispered. "But seeing you yesterday, it was like seeing Michael again. His eyes, his smile. You are his daughter. There's no doubt in my heart." Tasha frowned. "You're saying you believe Nia's your granddaughter?" Eleanor nodded. "I don't just believe it. I know it. And I want to do what I never did for your mother. Take care of her, love her, and give her everything she deserves." Tasha stiffened. "We're not asking for your money, ma'am." Eleanor smiled sadly. "I know. But I owe it to her. To both of you." Nia looked between them, her small hands gripping the chair. "You really knew my mom?" Eleanor's eyes filled again. "Yes, sweetheart. She used to hum when she worked. Always humming the same song. Something about sunshine after rain." Nia gasped softly. "That's the song she sang to me every night." The old woman smiled weakly. Then I guess she never stopped loving you, even when I made it hard for her. Tasha's eyes glistened now too, but she quickly wiped them. All right, she said, her voice low. You've said your piece. But you can't just walk back in and expect everything to be forgiven. I know, Eleanor said softly. I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope for a chance. A long silence followed. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the room. Then Eleanor turned to Nia again. There's something else, she said quietly. Something I never told anyone. That necklace, your necklace, it wasn't just a gift. It has a hidden inscription inside the pendant. Michael had it engraved for Jasmine. Nia blinked. Really? Eleanor nodded. Yes. Open it. Nia gently unclasped the tiny heart and peered inside. Faintly carved in the metal were the words, Forever my sunshine. Nia's breath caught. That's my mom's song. Eleanor smiled through her tears. He loved her more than anything. I see that now. And I see you, Nia. You're the proof that love doesn't die, it just waits to be found again. Tasha swallowed hard. She had wanted to stay angry, but something about the old woman's trembling honesty softened her heart. Eleanor reached for Nia's hand. Please, let me be a part of your life. I don't have much time left, but I can make sure you never have to struggle again. Let me do that for Jasmine. Nia didn't know what to say. She looked at her aunt helplessly. Before Tasha could respond, a sharp knock sounded at the door. A tall man in a gray suit stepped in, serious face, clean-cut hair. Mrs. Whitmore, he said firmly. We need to talk about the will. Eleanor frowned. Now. Yes, ma'am, he said. His eyes flicked toward Nia and Tasha. It's urgent. Eleanor's expression darkened slightly, confusion crossing her face. What do you mean urgent? The man straightened his tie. Your board is moving quickly. They've already started taking control of your asset. There's talk that your niece, he glanced at Nia, might not be recognized by the family lawyers unless you act fast. Tasha narrowed her eyes. Niece? She's her granddaughter. The man gave a polite but tight smile. That remains to be seen. Eleanor's face went pale again. They wouldn't dare. I'm afraid they would, ma'am, he said quietly. Especially your son's widow and her children. Eleanor's grip on Nia's hand tightened. Michael's half-brother's family, she muttered. They always wanted what wasn't theirs. The man lowered his voice. They're claiming you're not in your right mind, Mrs. Whitmore. That the girl and her aunt are manipulating you. Nia's eyes widened. What? Eleanor's face hardened, her frail voice turning sharp. No one will take away what belongs to her. Not this time. Tasha stood slowly. Ma'am, I think we should go. No, Eleanor said firmly. You need to stay. You both need protection now. Protection? Tasha repeated, alarmed. Eleanor looked toward the door, her voice trembling. Because once they find out who Nia really is, they'll come for her. The room fell silent again. The nurse standing nearby froze mid-step. Nia's heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. What do you mean they'll come for me? She asked quietly. Eleanor's eyes filled with fear. Because my family doesn't want the world to know the truth, that the Whitmore legacy belongs to a black child. Her words hung heavy in the air. And somewhere down the hall, faintly, a figure in a black coat stopped just outside the doorway, listening. The hallway light flickered once, and the tall figure in the black coat stepped quietly away from the door. No one noticed him. Not the nurses, not the passing orderlies, but his sharp eyes stayed fixed on the room number as he slipped around the corner and pulled out his phone. She's alive, he said in a low voice. And the girl's with her. A pause. Then, a cold reply crackled through the line. Make sure she doesn't stay that way. He ended the call, tucked the phone into his coat pocket, and disappeared into the elevator. Inside the hospital room, Nia sat frozen. Eleanor's words replayed in her mind. They'll come for her. Aunt Tasha's hand squeezed her shoulder. Okay, now I need someone to explain what that means, right now. Eleanor took a deep breath, her face pale under the fluorescent light. My late husband, Richard Whitmore, built our fortune through ruthless business deals. After he died, our family was left with more power than conscience. My stepchildren, Richards from his first marriage, believe they're entitled to everything. They've always seen Michael's bloodline as a threat, especially after he fell in love with your mother. Tasha frowned. So they hated her because she was black? Eleanor nodded slowly. Yes. And they despised me for ever allowing that love to exist. She sighed shakily. They think the Whitmore name should stay pure. The way she said the word made Nia's stomach twist. They'll fight to keep you hidden, Nia, Eleanor continued. If they learn who you really are, they'll try to silence it, maybe even make you disappear. Tasha shook her head. That's crazy talk. This is 2025, not the 1950s. Eleanor gave a bitter smile. Racism doesn't have an expiration date, dear. Just then, the nurse returned with a clipboard. Mrs. Whitmore, it's time for your medication. Eleanor nodded but didn't take her eyes off Nia. You two should stay somewhere safe tonight. Somewhere no one knows about. Tasha frowned. You're scaring her. Good, Eleanor said quietly. She should be careful. The nurse injected something into Eleanor's fore. Within minutes, her eyelids grew heavy. She fought to stay awake. There's a file, she whispered. In my office. Top drawer. It has proof, birth records, Michael's letters, everything. Find it before they do. Her voice trailed off. Mrs. Whitmore? Tasha asked. Eleanor didn't answer. She had drifted into sleep. That evening, Nia and Tasha took a cab home. The city looked different now, colder, sharper, full of eyes. Every black car they passed made Tasha tense up a little more. At home, she locked every door and window, then peeked through the blinds. Nia sat on the couch clutching her backpack. Do you believe her, Auntie? Tasha turned from the window. I don't know, baby. I believe she's telling the truth about your mom and that necklace. But all that talk about dangerous family members? That sounds like something out of a movie. She tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. Still, she added, we're not taking chances. Tomorrow, I'll go to that woman's office and see if that file is really there. Nia nodded slowly. Can I come? No, sweetheart. You've got school. But. No buts, Tasha said gently but firmly. I'll handle it. They ate dinner in silence. Neither of them had much of an appetite. Nia went to bed early but couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the man in the suit who had interrupted at the hospital, about Eleanor's frightened eyes, and about the word she'd whispered, proof. Proof of who she was. Proof that her mother wasn't just another forgotten name. Outside, a black car rolled to a stop across the street. The driver's window lowered slightly, a red ember glowing as someone took a slow drag of a cigarette. The next morning, the sky was gray and heavy with rain. Tasha dropped Nia at school and headed straight downtown. Eleanor's company, Whitmore Holdings, was a tall glass tower that seemed to scrape the clouds. At the front desk, a young receptionist looked up. Good morning. Do you have an appointment? Tasha smiled politely. I'm here to see Mrs. Whitmore. She's in the hospital, but she asked me to pick up a file from her office. The receptionist frowned. I'm sorry, ma'am. Mrs. Whitmore's office is currently sealed for internal review. Sealed? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Douglas Whitmore gave orders this morning. Tasha's stomach dropped. Who's Douglas? The woman lowered her voice. Her stepson. Tasha took a deep breath. Listen, I just need one file. Top drawer, marked personal. That's all. I'm sorry, the receptionist said firmly. No one's allowed in there without authorization. Tasha forced a smile and walked toward the elevator. When the receptionist wasn't looking, she ducked around the corner and slipped into a side stairwell. Her heart pounded as she climbed. You're out of your mind, Tasha, she told herself. But that old woman saved your niece's truth. You can't stop now. When she reached the 27th floor, she quietly pushed open the door. The hall was empty except for the hum of fluorescent lights. She found Eleanor's office easily, large glass doors with her name etched in gold. She tried the handle, locked. But she noticed something: the door wasn't fully sealed. The lock hadn't clicked all the way. Someone had been inside recently. She pushed gently and it creaked open. The office smelled faintly of roses and paper. Sunlight cut through tall windows, lighting up a large oak desk. Tasha hurried over and pulled open the top drawer. Inside was a neat stack of folders. She shuffled through them, contracts, property deeds, financial documents, until she found one labeled J. Johnson. Her breath caught. She opened it. Inside were photos of Jasmine, smiling in a nurse's uniform. Letters written in neat cursive signed Love M. There was also a birth certificate, Nia's birth certificate, with the father's name listed as Michael Whitmore. Tasha's hands shook. "Oh my God," she whispered. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hall. She froze. The steps grew louder, closer. She quickly stuffed the folder into her purse and ducked behind the desk. The door opened. A man in a dark suit stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp eyes and slicked-back hair. He scanned the room, frowning. It was the same man who had visited the hospital. He muttered into his phone, "She's not here. But someone's been through the drawers. The file's gone." A pause. Then, in a colder tone, "Find the girl." Tasha's heart thudded so hard she thought it would give her away. She stayed perfectly still as the man turned and left, slamming the door behind him. When the hall went silent, she exhaled shakily and ran for the stairs. Back at school, Nia sat in class staring at her notebook. The teacher was talking about history, about old laws that once separated black and white people, but Nia's mind was far away. She kept thinking about her mom, about the grandmother she never knew, about the hidden truth that was suddenly too heavy for her young heart. At lunch, her best friend, Mia, noticed. "You okay, Nia? You've been quiet all day." Nia hesitated, then shook her head. "Just family stuff." Before Mia could ask more, the school's front office buzzed over the intercom. "Nia Johnson, please come to the principal's office." Nia blinked. "I didn't do anything." When she got there, a tall man in a black coat stood by the door. His face was calm, polite, but his eyes were cold. "Hello, Nia," he said smoothly. "I'm here to take you home." She frowned. "Who are you?" "I work for your grandmother, Mrs. Whitmore," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "She sent me to pick you up early." The principal looked uncertain. "He showed proper ID," she said. Nia hesitated. Something in her gut told her this wasn't right. "My aunt always picks me up," she said carefully. "I'll wait for her." The man's smile tightened. "Your aunt's already on her way to the hospital. Mrs. Whitmore asked me to bring you to her safely." Nia's heart pounded. She looked toward the window, rain pouring outside. Then the man took a slow step forward. "Come on, sweetheart. Don't make this hard." Before she could move, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Aunt Tasha. "Don't leave school. He's not with us. Run." Nia's eyes widened. The man's expression changed, his polite smile fading as he realized she'd read something. "What did she just say?" he asked quietly. Nia didn't answer. She turned and bolted down the hallway. "Hey!" the man shouted, his footsteps thundering after her. Students gasped as Nia sprinted past lockers, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She burst through the back exit into the rain, splashing through puddles. The man followed, fast, his coat flapping behind him. "Stop!" he yelled. But Nia didn't stop. She ran faster, heart pounding, lungs burning. She didn't know where she was going, only that if he caught her, she might never see her aunt again. She turned a corner and darted into a narrow alley between two buildings, pressing herself behind a dumpster. She covered her mouth to quiet her breathing. The man's footsteps echoed closer, closer, then stopped. Silence. She waited, her body trembling. Then, a voice, calm and cold, You can't hide forever, little Whitmore. Nia froze. He knew. He knew who she was. And when she peeked around the corner, she saw his face again, staring right at her from the other end of the alley. Margaret couldn't sleep that night. The storm outside wasn't helping, the wind whistled through the trees like a sad song. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the little girl's necklace shining under the sunlight, the small golden heart trembling as the girl's tiny hands held it tight. That heart had once belonged to Margaret's own daughter. Her baby. Her sweet, brown-skinned baby she hadn't seen in 40 years. She got up from bed, grabbed her robe, and walked downstairs. The big house was quiet except for the creaking of the old wood floors. The portraits on the walls seemed to watch her as she passed by. She paused in front of one, her younger self in her 30s, smiling proudly next to a man in a military uniform. Her late husband, Henry. The photo was from the day they had adopted their only child, a little black baby girl they named Amelia. Margaret touched the glass. "I'm sorry, my darling," she whispered. "I thought I was doing what was right." Her heart squeezed tight as she remembered the arguments, the fear, the words her husband had said when Amelia turned 16 and started asking questions about her birth mother. "She's not like us, Margaret," Henry had said. "If she goes looking for them, we'll lose her." And so, under pressure, Margaret had done the unthinkable. She told Amelia she was unwanted, that her birth family had abandoned her. Amelia ran away a week later and never came back. Now, decades later, Margaret's chest ached at the thought that the little girl at the fair, sweet, brave Nia, might be her granddaughter. The same eyes, the same heart-shaped locket she had given Amelia on her 15th birthday. The next morning, she made up her mind. She was going to find out the truth. She drove straight to the community center where the fair had been held. The stalls were gone, but she found a janitor sweeping near the playground. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I'm looking for a little girl who was here yesterday. Her name is Nia. Do you know her?" The man frowned, thinking. "Yeah, I seen her around. Lives over on Maple Avenue, near the corner store. With her grandma, Miss Lorraine." Lorraine. The name hit Margaret like a bell. She remembered it, the woman Amelia used to talk about when she was little. Her birth mother's name was Lorraine. Margaret thanked the janitor and drove toward Maple Avenue. The houses there were small and old, paint peeling from the walls, but they had flower pots and bright curtains. It was a humble, loving neighborhood. When she parked and stepped out, a group of kids ran past laughing, and the smell of frying chicken filled the air. She knocked on the door of a little blue house. After a moment, an elderly black woman opened it. She had warm brown skin, silver hair tied back, and eyes that looked both strong and tired. "Can I help you?" she asked politely. Margaret swallowed. "Are you Lorraine Jenkins?" The woman froze. "Who's asking?" "My name is Margaret Hayes," Margaret said quietly. I think I knew your daughter. Amelia." The air between them grew still. Lorraine's hand trembled on the doorknob. For a long moment she just stared. Then her voice cracked. "Amelia Hayes? My baby girl." Margaret nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "Yes. She was my daughter too. I raised her after she was adopted." Lorraine pressed a hand to her mouth. "Oh Lord, have mercy." Margaret's legs felt weak, so Lorraine guided her inside. The house smelled of lavender and old wood. Family photos lined the shelves. Children, birthdays, school portrait. Then Margaret saw it, a picture of a young woman in a nurse's uniform, smiling brightly. She looked so much like Amelia that Margaret's heart nearly stopped. "That's my daughter," Lorraine said softly. "Amelia passed away 6 years ago. Cancer. But she left behind her little girl. Nia." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. The room blurred. "Then, she really is?" "Yes," Lorraine said. "Nia is your granddaughter." For a long time, neither of them spoke. They just sat there, the weight of lost years pressing down on their shoulders. Finally, Margaret said, "Does Nia know about me?" Lorraine shook her head. "No, child. Amelia never talked much about the past. She said she didn't want to burden her daughter with pain. She forgave you long before she died. The words struck deep. Margaret covered her face and began to cry. All the money, all the houses, all the jewelry, none of it mattered. She had missed birthdays, hugs, lullabies. She had missed being a mother. After a while, Lorraine patted her hand gently. If you want to meet her again, she comes home from school around 3. Margaret nodded, her voice barely a whisper. I'd like that very much. Hours later, Nia walked in carrying her backpack, humming a tune. When she saw Margaret sitting on the couch, she froze. Her eyes widened. You're the lady from the fair, she said, surprised. You're the one who cried about my necklace. Margaret stood up, her heart thudding. Yes, sweetheart. I think I owe you an explanation. Nia tilted her head. About what? Margaret knelt down so she was eye level with the girl. That necklace, it used to belong to my daughter. Her name was Amelia. She was your mother. Nia blinked. The words didn't seem to make sense at first. Then, slowly, she gasped. You mean you're my grandma? Tears streamed down Margaret's face. Yes, baby. I'm your grandmother. Nia's backpack slipped from her shoulder and hit the floor. She stared at Margaret for a moment longer, then suddenly threw her arms around her neck. Margaret hugged her tight, sobbing into the girl's hair. Lorraine stood in the doorway, tears glistening in her eyes. Looks like family found its way back, she whispered. For the next hour, they sat together on the couch, sharing stories. Nia showed her old drawings of her mom. Margaret told her about Amelia's favorite lullabies and how she used to dance in the kitchen. They laughed. They cried. But as the evening grew darker, a car pulled up outside. Loud music blasted for a moment before it stopped. Lorraine's smile faded. That's my grandson, Jamal, she said. He's Nia's uncle. He's not too fond of white folks, Miss Hayes. Life's been hard on him. Before Margaret could respond, the door swung open. A tall man with a trimmed beard and a heavy stare stepped in. He froze when he saw Margaret sitting there. What's this? He demanded. Who's she? Lorraine tried to calm him. Jamal, this is... I know who she is, he snapped. She's the lady who made Nia cry at the fair. You think you can just walk into our house after what you did? Please, Margaret said softly, standing up. I didn't mean any harm. Save it, Jamal interrupted, his voice rising. You rich folks think you can play hero after a lifetime of hurting us. My sister's gone because the world treated her like she was less than. You don't get to show up now pretending to care. Nia clung to Margaret's sleeve. Uncle Jamal, stop. She's Grandma. Jamal froze. His eyes flickered between them, confusion crossing his face. What did you just say? Lorraine sighed heavily. It's true, son. This here is your mama's adoptive mother. Nia's other grandma. Jamal stared at Margaret, his jaw tight. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned away, muttering under his breath, This is a bad idea. He stormed into the kitchen, slamming the door. Margaret sank back into the chair, shaken. Lorraine gave her a sympathetic look. Don't mind him. He's been through things no man should go through. Maybe time will help. But Margaret's heart was pounding. For the first time in decades, she'd found her family. And already she felt the tension rising again, the old wounds between races threatening to tear it apart. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, echoing through the night. Nia held her hand tightly and whispered, It's okay, Grandma. He'll come around. Margaret smiled weakly, brushing a tear from the girl's cheek. I hope so, sweetheart. I truly hope so. But deep inside, she knew something was coming, something that might test them all. And as Jamal's angry voice echoed faintly from the kitchen, the storm outside broke loose, lightning flashing across the sky. The air crackled with tension. Because sometimes, finding the truth isn't the end of the story, it's only the beginning of a new battle. The storm that night felt like a warning. Rain pounded against the windows of Lorraine's small house as thunder cracked across the sky. Inside, Margaret sat quietly at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea that had long since gone cold. She could hear voices from the next room, Lorraine trying to calm Jamal, and Jamal's voice rising again, sharp and angry. Nia sat on the couch beside her, her small hand resting on Margaret's arm, as if afraid she might disappear. "Grandma," Nia whispered, "why is Uncle Jamal so mad?" Margaret sighed. "He's not mad at you, honey. He's just hurt. Sometimes, when people are hurt for a long time, it comes out as anger." Nia looked down. "He said white people always take things from us. But you didn't take anything, right?" The question cut deep. Margaret's heart twisted painfully. "I did, sweetheart," she said softly. "A long time ago. I didn't understand then, but I hurt your mother in ways I wish I could take back." Nia frowned, confused. "You hurt my mom?" Margaret nodded slowly, tears gathering in her eyes. "When she was about your age, she started asking where she came from, about her birth family. I was scared she'd leave me, so I told her things that weren't true. I told her her real mother didn't want her. I was wrong. I was cruel. And she ran away because of it." Nia's eyes filled with tears. "You mean my mom didn't know her real mom?" "No," Margaret whispered. "And she didn't know how much I loved her either. Not until it was too late." The room fell silent except for the steady rhythm of the rain. Suddenly, the kitchen door burst open. Jamal stepped in, his face tight with anger. "You done telling stories yet?" he snapped. Lorraine followed him, looking exhausted. "Boy, that's enough." "No, it's not," Jamal shot back. "You don't know what kind of people she comes from. Folks like her been treating us like dirt for generations. You really think she's here to make peace? She's here 'cause she feels guilty. That's all." Margaret stood up, her voice trembling but steady. "You're right, Jamal. I am guilty. I made mistakes. I can't change the past. But I'm here because I want to make things right. I want Nia to know she has family on both sides who love her." Jamal scoffed. "Love? Where was that love when my sister was working 3 jobs and still couldn't afford her medicine? When she got turned away from hospitals because her insurance didn't cover enough? Where were people like you then?" Margaret opened her mouth but couldn't find the words. Everything she wanted to say sounded empty. Her wealth, her comfort, her safety, all of it suddenly felt like a wall separating her from this family she desperately wanted to reach. Lorraine stepped between them, her voice firm. "Jamal, sit down." But Jamal wasn't listening. "No, Grandma. I'm tired of people like her walking in here like they understand us. Like they can just fix everything with a few tears and a fancy check." He turned to Margaret, eyes blazing. "You think crying at a fair makes you a good person? My sister cried her whole life, and nobody cared." "Jamal!" Lorraine shouted, but her voice was drowned by another crash of thunder. Nia stood up suddenly. "Stop it!" she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Stop fighting! Mommy wouldn't want this." The room went still. Even the thunder seemed to fade into the distance. Margaret felt something crack open inside her, a deep, heavy ache that had been buried for decades. She looked at Nia, her small body trembling, her brave face streaked with tears, and she realized this child was the only one who could heal what years of anger had broken. Margaret walked slowly toward Jamal. "You're right," she said quietly. "I don't understand what you've been through. I never had to live it. But please believe me when I say, I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to listen." Jamal looked away, his jaw tight. "Words don't fix things." "I know," Margaret said. "That's why I want to do more than talk." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. "This is a deed to one of my smaller properties downtown. I want to turn it into a community center, in Amelia's name. A place for kids like Nia. A place for people who've been forgotten." Jamal blinked, caught off guard. "You serious?" "Yes. I have more money than I'll ever need. But I don't have family. Not anymore. Maybe this is how I start giving something back. For the first time, Jamal didn't have a quick answer. He stared at her, breathing heavily, then turned and walked out into the rain. Lorraine sighed deeply. He'll come around, she said softly. He just needs time. Margaret nodded, but her heart felt heavy. She wasn't sure if time could heal wounds that deep. Later that night, after Nia had fallen asleep on the couch, Margaret and Lorraine sat together watching the rain. Lorraine finally spoke. You know, when Amelia ran away, I prayed every day she'd find someone to love her. I never blamed you, Margaret. You did what you thought was right in a world that didn't make it easy to love a black child. But you came back now. That's what matters. Margaret smiled sadly. I just wish she could see this. See her daughter. See how brave and kind she is. Lorraine nodded. Maybe she does. Just then, the door opened again. Jamal stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his jacket. His face looked different now, not angry, just tired. He took a slow breath. Look, I overreacted earlier. I've seen too much, you know? Cops pulling me over for no reason, getting followed in stores, losing jobs, 'cause I wouldn't keep quiet. I got walls up. But Nia, she's smiling again for the first time since my sister died. So if you want to be in her life, I won't stop you. Margaret felt tears welling in her eyes. Thank you, Jamal. That means more than you know. He gave a small nod, then looked at the sleeping Nia. Just don't hurt her, okay? She's been through enough. I won't, Margaret promised. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure she knows she's loved. For the first time, Jamal gave a faint, hesitant smile. As the storm faded outside, Margaret realized something. The world around them hadn't changed. Racism, pain, mistrust, they were all still there. But something inside this small house had changed. A bridge had been built, one trembling step at a time. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds. Nia ran into Margaret's room holding her school backpack. Grandma, can you walk me to school today? Margaret's heart swelled. I'd love to, sweetheart. As they walked through the neighborhood, people watched curiously. A rich white woman holding hands with a small black girl, both smiling as if the world hadn't tried to keep them apart. At the school gate, Nia stopped and turned to her. Grandma, when I grow up, I want to help people too. Like Mommy did. Like you're doing now. Margaret knelt down and kissed her forehead. You already are, my love. You already are. As she watched Nia run inside, Margaret felt a peace she hadn't known in years. She didn't notice Jamal watching from across the street, arms folded, his expression unreadable. Then, as she turned to leave, a sleek black car pulled up beside her. The tinted window rolled down. Inside was a man in a dark suit. Mrs. Hayes, he said calmly. Yes. The man handed her a folder. You need to see this. It's about the community center project. Margaret frowned. Already? But Ma'am, the man interrupted, his tone serious. You should read it now. Margaret opened the folder. Her heart dropped. Inside were photographs. Her face, Jamal's face, Nia's school, Lorraine's house. And a single note typed neatly on paper. Stay out of that neighborhood if you value your life. Margaret looked up, her blood running cold, but the black car was already driving away. The peace she'd felt just moments ago vanished, replaced by fear. Someone didn't want her helping that community. Someone wanted to keep them divided. She clutched the folder to her chest, her heart pounding. Oh God, she whispered. What have I gotten us into? The bright morning suddenly felt darker than the storm the night before. Margaret stood frozen on the sidewalk, the folder trembling in her hand. The bright morning sun did little to chase away the chill that crept down her spine. Her first thought was of Nia. Was she safe inside the school? She glanced toward the gates, heart pounding. Kids were laughing, teachers greeting parents, everything looked normal, but Margaret couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching her. She took a deep breath, slipped the folder into her bag, and forced herself to walk calmly back to her car. Every step felt heavy, her thoughts spinning. Who would threaten her? Why now, just when she had found her family again? When she reached her car, she locked the doors immediately and sat still for a moment, her hands gripping the steering wheel. Then she opened the folder again, scanning the photos. They weren't random. Whoever took them knew exactly what they were doing. One picture showed Nia's school entrance. Another was a blurry shot of Lorraine's front porch. Another, this one taken from across the street, showed Margaret hugging Nia outside the fair. Her stomach turned. Someone had been following them. Her phone rang suddenly, making her jump. The screen showed a number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? There was a pause. Then a low voice said, You don't belong there, Mrs. Hayes. Leave those people alone. You'll only bring trouble. Margaret's voice shook. Who is this? What do you want? The line went dead. She sat there for a long time, trying to steady her breathing. The threat wasn't just about her, it was about Nia, Lorraine, Jamal. She couldn't let anything happen to them. That afternoon, she drove back to Lorraine's house, parking a block away so she wouldn't be seen. When Lorraine opened the door, Margaret's face was pale. Margaret, what's wrong? Lorraine asked immediately. Margaret handed her the folder. This was left for me this morning. Lorraine's eyes widened as she flipped through the photos. Lord have mercy. Jamal came in from the backyard, wiping his hands on a rag. What's going on? Lorraine passed him the folder. He went quiet as he looked through it, his expression hardening. You got followed? Yes, Margaret said. Someone doesn't want me helping the community. They told me to stay away, or else. Jamal's jaw clenched. Probably some racist fool who thinks we should stay in our place. Happens all the time around here. But this, he waved the photos, this is next level. Lorraine sank into a chair. We need to tell the police. Margaret shook her head. You know how that might go. If they see a white woman with money complaining about threats in a black neighborhood, they'll twist it. Or worse, they'll blame you. Jamal gave a bitter laugh. You're not wrong. He leaned against the wall, thinking. I know a guy who does security work. Ex-cop, good man. I'll have him keep an eye out. Margaret looked at him. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Jamal said. This could get ugly. Over the next few days, things grew tense. Margaret kept visiting, but always looking over her shoulder. Sometimes she noticed cars she didn't recognize parked nearby. Sometimes she thought she saw someone watching from across the street. Lorraine tried to stay calm for Nia's sake, but the older woman's hands trembled whenever she closed the curtains. Then one afternoon, Margaret came by with good news. She had finalized the paperwork for the community center. She even had a name, the Amelia Foundation. It's going to have after-school programs, free meals, and a small library, she told them proudly. It's not much, but it's a start. Nia clapped her hands, beaming. Mommy would love that. Jamal nodded slowly, respect flickering in his eyes. That's good work, Margaret. Real good. For the first time, they all smiled together, really smiled. But the peace didn't last. That evening, as Margaret was driving home, headlights appeared in her rearview mirror. She didn't think much of it at first, until the car behind her made every turn she did. When she slowed down, it slowed too. When she sped up, so did they. Her pulse raced. She reached for her phone but realized she'd left it at Lorraine's by mistake. Oh God, she whispered. She turned down a side street, hoping to lose them, but the car stayed close. Then suddenly, its headlights flashed twice, and it rammed her rear bumper. Margaret screamed, gripping the wheel. The car rammed her again, harder this time. Panicking, she turned sharply onto another road, tires screeching. Her heart thundered in her chest. The pursuing car didn't follow this time. It stopped at the corner and turned off its lights. Margaret pulled into a gas station, shaking, tears filling her eyes. She sat there for a long time, trying to calm down. The next morning, she returned to Lorraine's, dark circles under her eyes. They tried to run me off the road, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jamal slammed his hand on the table. That's it. I'm getting the cops involved, like it or not. Lorraine nodded. This gone too far. A few hours later, a detective arrived, Detective Harris, a middle-aged black man with a calm but sharp presence. He listened carefully as Margaret explained everything, flipping through the folder of photos. This looks organized, he said. Not some random hate mail. These people are watching your every move. Whoever they are, they don't want change in that part of town. What should we do? Margaret asked. Lay low for now, Harris replied. Don't walk alone. Don't post anything about your plans online. I'll have someone patrol near the house. Jamal frowned. So that's it? Just wait around. For now, yes, Harris said. But trust me, I've seen cases like this. They usually make a mistake sooner or later. Days turned into weeks. The tension slowly eased, though Margaret still jumped at every noise. Nia stayed cheerful, drawing pictures of her new 2 grandmas and proudly showing them off at school. Lorraine cooked big dinners to keep everyone together. Then, one quiet evening, Margaret received a call. It was Detective Harris. Mrs. Hayes, he said, we caught someone. Margaret's breath caught. Who? The man tailing you. He used to work for one of your late husband's old business partners, Charles Reed. Margaret frowned. Reed? He died years ago. His son didn't, Harris said grimly. Seems he's been running some illegal operations out of those same properties your husband once owned. Your new community center sits right on one of their old sites. They were using it for laundering money. Margaret gasped. So they were trying to scare me off? Exactly. But now that we have him in custody, you and your family should be safe. Still, I'd keep your doors locked for a while. When she hung up, tears filled her eyes, relief, fear, everything all at once. She drove straight to Lorraine's, her heart pounding with every turn. When she arrived, Jamal and Lorraine were sitting on the porch. Nia ran out to greet her. What's wrong, Grandma? Nia asked. Margaret smiled through her tears. Nothing's wrong anymore, sweetheart. It's over. We're safe now. Jamal stood up, frowning. You sure? Yes, Margaret said. The police caught the man who was following me. It was someone tied to my husband's old business. They didn't want the center built. Jamal shook his head slowly. So it wasn't about race after all. Margaret looked at him. Maybe not directly. But it still showed me how this world works. How people in power protect what they have, even if it means keeping others down. That's why I'm not giving up on this. The center is still opening. Lorraine smiled softly. That's the spirit. That weekend, the community gathered for the opening of the Amelia Foundation. Children ran around playing games, neighbors brought homemade food, and music filled the air. Margaret stood at the podium, Nia beside her holding her hand. When I first came to this neighborhood, she began, I thought I was helping others. But the truth is, you all helped me. You helped me see the world again through love, not fear. The crowd clapped. Nia squeezed her hand proudly. And this place, Margaret continued, is not mine. It belongs to every child who's ever been told they don't belong. My daughter, Amelia, believed in love stronger than hate. And this is her legacy. As cheers filled the air, Margaret looked over at Jamal. He gave her a nod, a real one this time, not forced or guarded. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the community center sign. Nia tugged her hand and whispered, Grandma, Mommy's watching us, right? Margaret smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek. Yes, baby. She's right here. And for the first time in decades, Margaret felt truly at peace. Not as a billionaire, not as someone trying to fix her past, but as a grandmother finally reunited with the family her heart had been missing all along. But as the crowd started to leave and the laughter faded, Detective Harris approached quietly. Mrs. Hayes, he said, lowering his voice, we found something else in that man's car. Margaret frowned. What is it? He handed her a small envelope with her name on it. This was addressed to you. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single photo, an old picture of her and Henry with a baby in her arms. Written on the back, in neat handwriting, were the words, "This isn't over. Some secrets never stay buried." Margaret stared at it, her heart freezing. Harris looked at her seriously. "You might want to watch your back, Mrs. Hayes. Someone else knows about your past." Margaret looked out at the smiling crowd, then down at the photo again. The peace she'd felt moments ago slipped away like a shadow at dusk. And deep in her heart, she knew, this story wasn't over. If you believe powerful stories like this deserve to be heard, don't just watch, be part of the movement. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a moment of truth. Every video we share shines a light on injustice and amplifies voices that must be heard. So don't stop here. Keep watching, keep sharing, and keep standing strong with us against racism. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Your support truly makes a difference.